Thank you very much. It's been such a bombardment of ideas. The fact that in today I've heard about spider goats and zombie brains and Iranian women surfing, and I love any day that turns into a really good Venn diagram at the end of it. What I find so fantastic about being here, and kind of what I'm going to talk about, is the level of passion. As was just mentioned by Rowan there, I do a radio show with Brian Cox. Every equal requires an opposite as well, and obviously when someone's as lovely as him, I am required. And we did a show recently, I was thinking of this just coming on, with the actor Brian Blessed. And when you see real passion, real fantastic. He's 76 years old. Two Brians on one show, but with very different vocal delivery. And Brian Blessed just, the first question he got from Brian Cox just went, Brian, what do you think about intergalactic space travel? And Brian Blessed at 76 just went, I've always wanted to go to Mars! Why haven't we gone to Mars? Tell me, Brian, tell me! And he meant it, right? This is the thing, right? We are living in incredible times. First of all, I should get us up to speed. Let's find out where we've got to so far. So there we go. That gets us up to speed. We are on the planet Earth. And we are living in one of the best times ever to be human, the late 20th century, the beginning of the 21st century. I'll give you an illustration. Here is a news story from a few months back. And this is a news story you couldn't have had not that long ago. First of all, it's great, right? First of all, it's about black holes. Everyone loves black holes. Secondly, not just any kind of black hole, it is a super massive black hole. The best kind of black hole. Thirdly, it has an element of jeopardy for Dublin because, as you can see, it is nearby. How close is nearby? Have a look, they're 60 million light years away. Does anyone here know how long it would take to travel 1 light minute traveling at the maximum Irish speed limit? Right? This is a big universe, right? I think it's 18.34 years, but it may well have changed. Anyway, but this is a fantastic time to live, and yet at the same time, we have this strange thing where people, because we are bombarded by so many wonderful things, we have so many different forms of entertainment, we have medicines, we have hot water, we have clean water. Nevertheless, people seem to have become either stressed or bored. These are the two things. We have so much now that in fact we become blind to it all. I personally, to an extent, blame local radio commercial DJs. Because there's just this whole thing that everyone's meant to have so much fun, you feel you're never having enough fun. If you've ever listened to a Friday night DJ, it just starts off immediately, hey, it's the weekend, the weekend's coming, it's Friday, super fun Friday. What are you going to do? Email us, tweet us, tell us what kind of fun you're going to have. That's too much pressure. If you've ever wondered why extraterrestrials haven't visited this Earth, right? We send those signals out across the universe. Would you choose us? Which planet should we go to? Let's listen to this one. Hi! No. So, and this is why I want to talk about one particular man who has greatly inspired me. This is Charles Darwin. I'm sure you know that. Charles Darwin. I love Charles Darwin. I think, first of all, the face. That is the face that all male scientists should have. The beard, the kindly but sad eyes, the nose. A scientist's nose. A nose that almost stopped him going on the voyage of the Beagle. Because when Captain Fitzroy saw his nose, he said, no, that is the nose of a weak man. He cannot come. And Darwin then argued for his nose, and later on wrote, fortunately, I persuaded him that my nose spoke falsely. Right? He had a delightful way of writing. One of my favourite lines of his is, but this does not appear to be the common action of domestic pigs when quarrelling. This is a man who researched his pigs. Normal, idiosyncratic quarrelling. I'll make a note. That's a fantastic thing. And he wrote, this is the phrase I really want to talk about. Oh, another of my favourites is, the sight of a feather in a peacock's tail makes me sick. But this is one of my favourites. He was going around the rainforest. This was the beginning of the voyage of the Beagle. And he talked about the distraction of going around the rainforest. And he said, it is bewildering. A day is bewildering. The eye attempts to follow the flight of a gaudy butterfly, but is then distracted by some strange tree or fruit. My mind is a chaos of delight. Now that to me is the important thing. My mind is a chaos of delight. This is something we have available to us all the time. If we stop, if we think, if we just, for a moment, just pull back from the bombardment of technology, and we just look towards the sky, you look towards the river, you think of the fact that framed in every window, when you look out of that window, you will see more life than there is in the rest of the known universe beyond the planet Earth. The chaos of delight is everywhere. And Darwin had, coming up with the idea that he came up with, an incredible idea, with Alfred Russel Wallace as well, obviously. The idea of evolution by natural selection. And yet, despite the fact he came up with one of the greatest ideas that any human being has come up with, when he was asked what he had that perhaps gave him the advantage as a human being, he said, in a very humble way, well, I think that I'm better than the common run of man in noticing things. That was it. That doesn't, just, what are you good at? Very good at noticing things. Oh, really? Yeah. Look over there. I hadn't noticed that. You wouldn't have done. I have a knack. And that's an incredible thing. It's that great thing in the 19th century, it meant you were a great scientist. In the 21st century, it means you're a regular on TV stand-up shows. Things change. And I would like to have seen Darwin on the comedy road shows there. Just hello, everyone. What is it about finches and their beaks, eh? Some of them quite long, some of them short and stubby. I don't know. Different foodstuffs, different islands, I imagine. Is this thing on? But it's... that noticing things, this is what he did all the way through his life. He wrote so many wonderful books. He wrote, I asked my friend Steve Jones, an incredible science writer, wonderful science writer, I once said, is there any Charles Darwin I shouldn't read? He said, don't read the books about barnacles. He became overly obsessed. And he had barnacles arriving from around the world. Each day, the postman, a new box of barnacles, right? I don't know if you've ever been drunk and ordered something off the internet, right? That was kind of... I don't even remember ordering those barnacles, but thank you. And he spent so much time, a wonderful father as well. If you read about him and his wife, Emma, they are not the stereotype Victorian parents you might imagine, and they spent much time playing and caring with the children. And a typical day for Charles Darwin would be playing with the kids and then looking at barnacles, and then back to the kids, more barnacles. Hang on a minute, I've just seen a brilliant one. Okay, back to the kids, right? So much so that when one of his sons went for the first time to someone else's house, he walked around all the rooms and became increasingly confused until eventually his friend said, what's the matter? And he said, but where does your father do his barnacles? Now, that was the first time he found out that not every dad did barnacles. In fact, almost no other dads did barnacles, right? And I have a book of his here, which again, this is the thing that we don't have to have great minds, right? We might not be able to win the Nobel Prize, write wonderful novels, whatever it might be, but we all have minds that are good enough to investigate and question the world and be interested to be self-conscious beings. Darwin wrote 19 books, and those 19 books covered the descent of man. They discovered bizarre ape behaviors. There was all my coral reefs, the various contrivances of orchids to get pollinated. Very, very tropical and exotic ideas, and yet his final book as an old man was this one I have here, The Formation of Vegetable Mold Through the Action of Worms with Variations on Their Habits, right? Observations on their habits, right? Now, that probably to you doesn't sound like the best book, right? But I've read the whole of this book. I can honestly tell you, this is the best book about earthworms I have ever read, right? And I've read 3. This is the only one that's non-fiction. And I'm just going to read one experiment. Think of this, an old man. This is just his one experiment. I love this. Worms do not possess any sense of hearing. They took not the least notice of the shrill notes from a metal whistle, which was repeatedly sounded near them. Now see that image, an old man in a garden in the south of England with a whistle. Beep, 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 beep. Nothing. Note that down, Lionel. Now, a lesser scientist would have stopped there, but he was not a lesser scientist. Let's move to stage 2. Nor did they take any notice of the deepest and loudest tones of a bassoon. Yes! He got the bassoon out! This is how jazz was invented. And they were indifferent to shouts. I mean, see all these things. Beep, beep, beep. Nothing. Get the bassoon up. Still nothing. Oi, worm. Still nothing. Then it continues, when we took them in and played the piano. Yes, they took them in and played the piano. And you can do these experiments. If you pick this book up, and the worms, they are beneath us all the time. He realized this idea of churning the soil, digesting the soil, this was a very, very important thing. And it was this kind of mind that also led to understanding stuff like this. Now, let's have a look here, which is there. I don't know how many of you know what this is. This is, does anyone know? It's a piglet squid, right? That is real. That is not made up. That is the kind of thing that mutation, heredity, and natural selection, that's what can happen, right? This is what I spend most of my time doing on the internet, by the way. I am not as other men. Just looking for some weird animals. Oh no, my wife's coming home. Quick, clear history and look at pornography. What have you been doing? Just looking misogynistically at this woman, honest. Why is there a picture of an Irish deer? I love its antlers. Anyway, but it's just... You look at that, and there is such joyousness that, there's so much of the undersea world we still don't know about. By the way, if you don't like it full on, let's have a look at it there in profile. That is real. Again, mutation, heredity, natural selection. You get things, there we go, the proboscis monkey. And also you get things like the axolotl. I love having a screen this size, by the way. This is what I dream of in my life. And one day, 1,500 people just looked at me showing them an axolotl. Yeah, who the teachers didn't believe that would happen. I've just realised I'm looking at the time and I think I'm about 1/4 of the way through. But if you want to come to the pub with me afterwards, I've got a lot of things to tell you. But you get the axolotl, and then you get things like, look at that there. Yes, an intake of breath from some. The naked mole rat. Wonderful, exciting, intriguing, fascinating, and so ugly it becomes beautiful, right? There is something about when you look at the naked mole rat. I showed a friend of mine that he had never seen a naked mole rat, and I've never seen someone react with such anger at a living thing, right? I showed it to him, he just went, what's the point of that? Right? I said, calm down. I said, there is no point. He went, well, that's a relief. I said, there's no point to you either. And then he got tetchy again. It's just, but this is the thing. You look at a creature like this and you think, first of all, you think, surely that is not the best an animal can be to survive. And that's one of the great things. No, it's not. No, that is the least worst an animal can be to survive. This is, again, the beautiful thing of mutation, heredity, natural selection. I don't want to shock you, but all of you here, not a single one of you is the perfect human being. Each one of us is the least worst version that has managed to get this far. And that's the other thing that I want to talk about. This is a thing about human knowledge. We are a species that want to be cocksure. We really want things that are certain. Now, one of the delights of human imagination, and in particular human knowledge, and even more in particular scientific knowledge is not 100% right. Scientific knowledge is hopefully the least wrong version of events. That's what we're after. As we continue the journey, we keep trying to find answers that are less wrong than the previous answer, and sometimes we have diversions on the way. Someone wrote to me, I get very weird emails. I get some very strange people who kind of troll me. And someone wrote a while back, and they wrote to me, they said, if science is so good, why do they keep having to change it, right? So I wrote back to him and I said, what I've said to you, I said, it's not 100% body of knowledge. It's the idea is that it's the least wrong. Therefore, that's the exciting thing about it. The challenges are always there, new challenges. And he went, well, it seems ridiculous. I mean, scientists haven't even worked out how the universe began. Now, I feel that's one of the bigger questions. I feel of the troublesome questions, oi, mate, how come everything exists? That one might take time, right? And I wrote back to him, I said, yeah, to be fair, you're right, they haven't, but they have got to roughly the first 10 to the minus 34th of a second. But there's work to be done. And he went, exactly. That's why my idea of how the universe began is as good. Now, at this point, I had to explain to him that wrong is not a level playing field. It's not just wrong, there's wrong, and sometimes wrong! Right, there are different levels of wrong. If you get stung by a wasp, and one of your friends goes, oh, you've been stung by a wasp, you know what you need to do? Pour a bit of milk on the sting. But your other friend goes, no! You must cut your hand off immediately before the wasp demon goes into your mind! Both of those answers are wrong. But I feel that one is more wrong than the other, right? So I'm getting very close to the, by the way, just to check, do you find it more attractive now? How attractive do you find it now? I love this. TED, ideas worth spreading. And what is the main idea being spread today? The blobfish. Anyway. So what I kind of just finish off by talking about is I wanted to talk a little bit about an idea of Darwin's. Darwin wrote about in The Descent of Man, the long childhood. Now, this is something we all have. We have, compared to most creatures, a long childhood. You will have seen when many creatures are born on nature documentaries, they fly away, they swim away. Even when a horse is born, it kind of, it comes out, it wobbles around a bit, it goes off, it wobbles back to its mother. But even then, a brief relationship with a parent. Whereas we have quite a long childhood. We have, anyone here who's been at the birth of a child, when you first hold a child, you just think, is that it? It doesn't kind of just pop out the womb and just kind of go, all right, how you doing? Is the fridge over there? Brilliant, thanks very much. I'm still a bit wobbly. That's not what happens, right? When my son was born and I held, I was on my own for 3 hours, just prod, wiggle, wiggle, he's fine, right? And you start to realize the responsibility you have to try and make sure, with all of us, this potential... I remember the moment that within a week of my son being born, I start to think, oh God, what am I going to do that's actually going to turn him into a cannibal, mass-murdering killer? And you just have these little things. And I imagine in 30 years' time where he's killed and eaten 38 people. And I say, why did you do that, Archie? And he'll go, don't you remember, Father? It was that day on the beach. Chesil Beach, I think it was. I was eating a strawberry mivvy. There was a gust of wind. The lolly fell and landed in the shingle. And you shouted at me, even though it wasn't my fault. From that point onwards, I knew I'd kill. And that's... We have responsibility. I have up there an image of Annie Darwin. Charles Darwin and Emma Darwin, they lost 3 children. Annie Darwin was the oldest of the children to die in childhood, and she died of... There's still much debate, but there is it's an idea that she may well have died of tuberculosis. If you look at the records that we have for things like tuberculosis, and we look at the way that through clean water, through the change in sanitation, through vaccination, how things have changed, that the longer childhoods there. I have a little BCG scar on my arm. I don't know if you have that. It's one of the most terrifying things. You're at school and you're kind of you're just there waiting, and all the older boys and girls walk past and go, ha! You're having the BCG? It's terrifying! The needle's that long and they have to weave it through your arm and then all stuff comes out. All right? It wasn't that bad, by the way. And that little scar that I have on my arm, left from that, I kind of see that as a tribal scar of human imagination, of human endeavor, of where we've got to. My final thing I'm just going to say is that moment, for those of you who've been at childbirth, many of you, I'm sure, have actually given birth, right? I've spoken to women who've given birth. Apparently, it smarts. And there's that screaming and that agony. Why? Because of this great, big skull just manages to get out. And that's the agony there. So if we don't use our minds, first of all, what a rude gesture to that agony that our parents went through, our mother went through, I should say, that agony that she went through. She goes, do you know what, Mum? I just think I'm going to be a bit of an idiot. No, you're bloody not. I screamed for 72 hours for you to have a brain. Go and do a crossword. And that is where the chaos of delight remains. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.